Hello and welcome, dear listener. You're here now, and there is nothing more you need to do. No decisions to make, no tasks to complete, just a quiet journey through time as we settle into the slow rhythm of a history long past. Tonight, we travel into the world of the average German soldier during the Second World War. Not the generals or politicians, not the ideologues or the faces in history books, but the everyday conscript, the young man with a wool uniform too large for his shoulders, whose boots pinch at the heel, and whose orders come not from glory, but from fear. This isn't a tale of battles and strategy, though those may pass by in the background. This is a story about cold mornings, about canned bread, about trench stoves and lice, about the hum of exhaustion that rarely lifted. It is also a story about isolation, bureaucracy, discomfort, and quiet resilience under the weight of an unwinnable war. As we move gently through the 4 parts of tonight's narrative, you'll first find yourself in the daily life of a Wehrmacht soldier, immersed in the textures, sounds, and silences of the front. Then, we'll shift to a broader perspective, unfolding a pivotal moment in the war from the soldier's eye view, the catastrophic momentum of Operation Barbarossa. Later, we'll sift through the whispered thoughts and quiet regrets found in letters, hidden, forgotten, and rediscovered. And finally, we'll walk the polished corridors of distant war rooms and commandeered mansions, exploring how comfort coexisted with chaos. And if you'd like to, feel free to share in the comments where you're listening from and what time it is for you. You're part of a long, quiet thread of others drifting off to sleep, just like this. But for now, imagine yourself stepping backward, not in a rush, but slowly, softly, letting the noise of the present fade away. The world becomes dimmer, simpler, colder. You are handed a uniform, and you begin to march. Let us begin. It begins not with a grand moment, but with a form, filled out in a government office, your name written in tidy block letters, a birth date, a signature, and just like that, you belong to the army now. There is no fanfare, no dramatic speech, only a thin envelope and the instructions to report to the rail yard at dawn. The letter does not ask, it does not explain, it simply assumes that you will come. You do. The first thing they take is your name. In place of it, a number, a file, a bunk. You are shaved and issued a uniform. It is a size too large. The jacket smells faintly of tobacco and of the soldier who wore it last. You do not know his name, and you do not ask. You are handed a rifle. It's heavier than you expected. You carry it now. Everywhere, always. Days become routine. You wake before the sun. You run laps through fields wet with dew and mud. You eat in silence. You practice marching. Again and again. Left, right. A rhythm without thought. Your feet blister. Your hands callous. You stop noticing the pain. They tell you to forget your life before. They say the army is your mother now. And so, you forget. When the orders come, they arrive quietly. You are packed into a rail car, 40 men, shoulder to shoulder, in silence. The windows are narrow and thick with grime. You can barely see the countryside as it slips past. For hours, there is nothing but the low hum of the wheels. You lean against the wall. It is cold. Someone coughs. Someone else begins to hum. A folk song, slow and familiar. You think of home. You try to remember the shape of your bed, your mother's hands, the sound of your town's church bell at noon. But the memory is already fading, softening like mist. When you step off the train, the first thing you feel is wind. Sharp, dry, full of dust and snow. The Eastern Front is not a place. It is a condition. Endless, shifting, unknowable. There is no clear front line. Only roads and forests and villages too quiet to trust. Your unit is marched to a staging area. Just a field, carved into sections by trenches, wires, and equipment. You dig your own shelter. The ground is frozen beneath the topsoil. You use a spade, then your hands. You are told not to stop until it's deep enough to lie in. You do not stop. The first night is the longest. You try to sleep in a trench lined with pine branches. You lay on your back, listening to footsteps, to coughing, to wind. Someone snores, someone whimpers. You pull your coat tighter around you and wait for morning. The days are not filled with action. They are filled with waiting. Waiting for food. Waiting for orders. Waiting for something to happen. You are put on sentry duty. 4 hours on. 4 hours off. You walk a perimeter with your rifle slung across your chest. The snow crunches beneath your boots. You listen for sounds. There are none. That is what makes it worse. Food arrives in metal tins, dented and warm to the touch. Sometimes it's potatoes. Sometimes it's something that was once meat. There is always bread, hard at the corners, soft in the middle. It tastes of flour and fatigue. There is a Sats coffee, a bitter brew made of roasted grains. You sip it slowly, though it offers little warmth. Still, it is something to do. Your hands are never clean. You wipe them on your trousers, on your coat, on the ground. It doesn't matter. Your boots are stiff. The left one squeaks. They are lined with straw, changed every few days. It helps, but not enough. Frostbite is common. You learn to walk carefully, not because of injury, but because you're not sure you can feel your toes. Your nose runs constantly. You do not wipe it. There is no point. You carry a tin mirror. You shave with cold water. You write letters with borrowed pencils. The letters are carefully worded, censored before they leave. You talk of the weather. You talk of food. You do not talk of what you've seen. Sometimes you receive a reply. The handwriting is familiar. The paper smells faintly of home. You read it twice. Then you fold it and place it inside your coat, near your chest. It comes without warning. Just a distant whistle. Then the ground shakes. Then again, and again. You cover your head. You count to 10. You do not move. When it ends, you emerge from your trench. There is a hole where a supply tent once stood. You don't ask who was inside. You are told to resume your post. Sleep becomes a memory. You close your eyes in 5-minute intervals. You rest your head against tree trunks. You dream of nothing. Your body continues. But your thoughts slow. You are not frightened. You are simply tired. You pass through a village one day, burnt, crumbling, empty. Doors hang open. Ash rests on windowsills. There are toys on the floor, a broken cup in the street. You are told not to stop. You walk through, eyes forward. You breathe through your mouth. There is no sound. Even the birds are gone. You stop remembering days of the week. You stop expecting hot meals. You stop wondering what the war is about. You learn to march without thought, to eat without taste, to sleep without dreams. You become part of the machine. You do not love it. You do not hate it. You simply are. One night, you lie in your dugout and listen to the distant sound of artillery. It is far away. It does not concern you. You stare upward. The ceiling is made of pine branches laid across wooden slats. Snow dusts through the cracks. Your breath clouds in front of your face. You hold your rifle close, not because you need it, but because it is the only thing that feels real anymore. You wonder if your family still keeps your room the same. You wonder if your mother still waits for your letters. You wonder what this war will leave of you. Then the wind rises, and your eyes close. You are still, and the world is still, and nothing moves but time. By the summer of 1941, the days were long across the Russian plains. The kind of long that blurs sunrise into sunset. The kind of long that stretches over endless fields of wheat, interrupted only by the silhouettes of crooked wooden houses and the occasional glint of metal on rail lines. Into this soft summer light marched millions of men. Over 3 million German soldiers, along with tanks, trucks, supply wagons, and horses, pushing east across a 1,000-mile front. They called it Operation Barbarossa, but for many of them, it was simply the next set of orders. Imagine you are among them, part of the Great Push. You are told that this will be swift, that the Soviet Union is weak, unprepared, that you'll be home by winter. But already the march feels endless. Already something feels not quite right. You travel in long columns, broken only by the sounds of engines sputtering and the sharp whistles of officers. The heat is dry and insistent. Dust clings to everything, your uniform, your teeth, the inside of your nostrils. You stop briefly to rest, leaning against your pack. There's no shade. Your skin burns beneath the wool. At first, the villages you pass through are quiet. The locals seem stunned, some curious, others disappearing behind closed doors. A few wave, some scowl, but most simply watch and say nothing. The roads are rough. Paved sections give way to stretches of dirt and gravel. Bridges are sometimes sabotaged. You wait as engineers rebuild crossings over rivers with names you cannot pronounce. The trucks often break down, and horses, so many horses, begin to collapse from the strain. You try not to look too closely when one falls and doesn't get up. Every few days, another skirmish. The Soviets retreat quickly at first. It seems like the plan is working. But then something shifts. They begin to scorch the earth behind them. Fields are set ablaze, crops destroyed, wells poisoned, entire towns left hollow, stripped of anything useful. Soon, you're not advancing into a country, you're advancing into a void. Food becomes a question mark. You eat what you carry. Then you eat what you can find. Then you begin to wonder what happens next. As you go farther east, the resistance stiffens. The Soviet army is not gone. It's simply deeper in the country, and it is regrouping. You are told to press on, always press on. One night, you sleep in a barn. The floor is scattered with straw and mouse droppings. You curl around your rifle and close your eyes, but not for long. Gunfire wakes you. There's shouting, flashes of light, the thudding rhythm of chaos. A Soviet ambush. You grab your helmet, already running. When it ends, the barn is smoking. 2 men from your unit are missing. No one says their names. The commander just tells you to fall back into formation. There is no time for grief. There is only the road ahead. The weather begins to turn. The warm winds of summer give way to cool rain, then mist, then something colder. Autumn in Russia is unlike any you've known. The land turns to mud, thick, deep, impossible mud that clogs wheels and clings to boots. You walk slower now, sometimes waist, deep in earth. Tanks stall, wagons sink. You begin to dream of standing still. But you are still told to keep moving. The great cities are ahead, they say. Minsk, Smolensk, Kiev, and beyond them Moscow. Victory is still the plan. Then comes October, and winter arrives early. Snow falls, not in flurries, but in silence. Thick, constant, unwelcome. Your coat, already worn thin, is no match for the cold. Your fingers turn stiff. You wrap them in cloth. But it doesn't help much. Frost forms inside your boots. The leather cracks. Your socks are wet. Fires become precious. You crowd around them at night, trading stories, trying not to sleep too deeply. You wake each morning unsure if your toes will move. One morning, you are sent to scout a nearby village. There are only ruins now. Charred beams, a collapsed church steeple. You find an open well with frozen water. You chip off some ice and bring it back. It's the only water for miles. By November, it's clear the plan has failed. The supply lines have collapsed. The trains can't reach you. Fuel runs dry. Ammunition dwindles. But the Soviets are only just beginning. Their reinforcements arrive with proper winter gear. Their tanks move better in snow. Their soldiers know how to fight in -20 degrees. You, on the other hand, are now an invader caught in the cold. Each day is a negotiation with misery. Each step forward is questioned. Each backward glance is a temptation. The commanders give speeches. They talk of perseverance, but their faces are pale. They, too, are afraid. By December, the push toward Moscow stalls completely. You hear rumors that Hitler is furious, that generals are being replaced, that spring will bring new orders. But for now, there is only the snow, and the silence, and the slow, creeping understanding that you are too far in, too deep, and too cold to retreat. You lie awake in your frozen trench, watching your breath rise like fog. The frost on your eyelashes doesn't melt. You curl your body inward, as small as you can make it. You imagine warmth. You remember your first summer here, so hot and dusty. It feels like another life. A bird cries in the distance. You wonder if it's real, or if it's your mind playing tricks again. And still, you wait, because that's all there is to do. You wait for orders. You wait for the thaw. You wait for something that might never come. As the war unfolded across battlefields and borders, another kind of loss took place quietly, without gunfire or fanfare. A loss not of lives, but of memory. Not of cities, but of knowledge. In the quiet city of Königsberg, once a hub of philosophy, learning, and classical Prussian refinement, an invisible erasure was slowly beginning. Königsberg sat near the Baltic Sea, its cobbled streets lined with brick churches and quiet cafes, and its river, the Pregel, winding softly past ivy-covered buildings. It was a city of scholars, of clocks ticking in university libraries, of candlelit writing desks, of parchment and ink and the slow, careful reading of ancient texts. In the centuries before war, Königsberg had built one of the most beautiful and rich libraries in Europe. Thousands upon thousands of volumes, many unique, some centuries old, rested in its shelves. Latin treatises, medieval manuscripts, hand-drawn maps, musical scores, personal letters, and early scientific studies, all carefully cataloged, bound, and guarded. There were works from Copernicus, notes in Kant's own handwriting, Slavic folktales transcribed by candlelight, a collection of medieval Baltic chronicles, illustrated by hand, volumes with gold leaf, their spines cracked gently with age, their pages exhaling the scent of time. The library had survived wars before. It had outlasted occupations, revolutions, and centuries of shifting kings and empires. But as World War II widened its reach, even the silent corners of the library began to feel exposed. German authorities, anticipating danger, began quietly packing the rarest volumes. Some were moved to countryside estates. Others disappeared into castle basements, stored behind locked doors. No one knew for certain which books went where. Records were kept, but then scattered. Some burned, some forgotten. The library building itself, once proud and peaceful, became ghostly. Shutters were drawn. Reading rooms were silent. The velvet chairs, once full of students and scholars, sat untouched, gathering a slow layer of dust. Outside, the war crept closer. By 1944, the air raids had begun. Königsberg, like so many German cities, was no longer safe. In August, the British Royal Air Force launched a devastating bombing campaign. Fires swept through the old quarters. Ancient timber houses collapsed. Church towers burned. And within the chaos, the library, too, caught fire. The flames moved slowly at first, licking at rafters. Then faster, finding the dry pages, the old wood, the tightly packed shelves. Within hours, centuries of knowledge were gone. No one knows how many volumes were lost that night. Tens of thousands. Perhaps over 100,000. Many of them irreplaceable. In the aftermath, survivors walked through the rubble, careful not to step on blackened fragments of parchment. Charred corners of maps blew gently in the wind. Ash collected in stone crevices where spines had once rested. The library was not just a building. It was a memory palace, a vault of thought and culture, now reduced to silence, and yet, some said not all was lost. Stories began to surface of books hidden deep in East Prussian forests, of crates discovered in old Prussian castles, of soldiers carrying away volumes, unaware of their value. After the war, the Soviet Union took control of the city. Königsberg became Kaliningrad. German residents were expelled. Russian settlers arrived. The past was paved over, new street names, new buildings, new languages. The library was never rebuilt. But fragments began to appear, decades later, in the most unexpected places. In the 1990s, a dusty box was uncovered in a Moscow archive. Inside were volumes marked with Königsberg's seal, books long thought destroyed. In Polish libraries, too, librarians stumbled across texts from the old collection, some stamped, some handwritten. A map here, a manuscript there. Each find raised the same question: what else might have survived? And so began a quiet, scholarly mystery. No loud headlines, no dramatic scenes. Just hushed conversations between historians, quiet cataloging efforts, long letters exchanged between institutions. The hope that somewhere, in a forgotten basement or a sealed crate in an attic, a part of Königsberg's library still waits. Even today, researchers occasionally uncover a lost fragment, its edges worn, its ink faded but intact. A piece of memory returned. The city itself is different now. Kaliningrad is modern. Soviet apartment blocks stand where spires once rose. But in corners of the city, some whisper that the past still lingers, that beneath the foundations, the ghosts of scholars walk, that in quiet alleys, the wind still carries the scent of old paper, that in dreams, the lost library calls softly to those who remember. And so the question remains, unanswered, but gentle: can knowledge ever truly be destroyed? Or does it simply wait, in silence, to be found again? As the war unfolded across battlefields and borders, another kind of loss took place quietly, without gunfire or fanfare. A loss not of lives, but of memory. Not of cities, but of knowledge. In the quiet city of Königsberg, once a hub of philosophy, learning, and classical Prussian refinement, an invisible erasure was slowly beginning. Königsberg sat near the Baltic Sea, its cobbled streets lined with brick churches and quiet cafes, and its river, the Pregel, winding softly past ivy-covered buildings. It was a city of scholars, of clocks ticking in university libraries, of candlelit writing desks, of parchment and ink and the slow, careful reading of ancient texts. In the centuries before war, Königsberg had built one of the most beautiful and rich libraries in Europe. Thousands upon thousands of volumes, many unique, some centuries old, rested in its shelves. Latin treatises, medieval manuscripts, hand-drawn maps, musical scores, personal letters, and early scientific studies, all carefully catalogued, bound, and guarded. There were works from Copernicus, notes in Kant's own handwriting, Slavic folktales transcribed by candlelight, a collection of medieval Baltic chronicles, illustrated by hand, volumes with gold leaf, their spines cracked gently with age, their pages exhaling the scent of time. The library had survived wars before. It had outlasted occupations, revolutions, and centuries of shifting kings and empires. But as World War II widened its reach, even the silent corners of the library began to feel exposed. German authorities, anticipating danger, began quietly packing the rarest volumes. Some were moved to countryside estates. Others disappeared into castle basements, stored behind locked doors. No one knew for certain which books went where. Records were kept, but then scattered. Some burned, some forgotten. The library building itself, once proud and peaceful, became ghostly. Shutters were drawn. Reading rooms were silent. The velvet chairs, once full of students and scholars, sat untouched, gathering a slow layer of dust. Outside, the war crept closer. By 1944, the air raids had begun. Königsberg, like so many German cities, was no longer safe. In August, the British Royal Air Force launched a devastating bombing campaign. Fires swept through the old quarters. Ancient timber houses collapsed. Church towers burned. And within the chaos, the library, too, caught fire. The flames moved slowly at first, licking at rafters. Then faster, finding the dry pages, the old wood, the tightly packed shelves. Within hours, centuries of knowledge were gone. No one knows how many volumes were lost that night. Tens of thousands. Perhaps over 100,000. Many of them irreplaceable. In the aftermath, survivors walked through the rubble, careful not to step on blackened fragments of parchment. Charred corners of maps blew gently in the wind. Ash collected in stone crevices, where spines had once rested. The library was not just a building, it was a memory palace, a vault of thought and culture, now reduced to silence. And yet, some said not all was lost. Stories began to surface of books hidden deep in East Prussian forests, of crates discovered in old Prussian castles, of soldiers carrying away volumes, unaware of their value. After the war, the Soviet Union took control of the city. Königsberg became Kaliningrad. German residents were expelled. Russian settlers arrived. The past was paved over, new street names, new buildings, new languages. The library was never rebuilt, but fragments began to appear, decades later, in the most unexpected places. In the 1990s, a dusty box was uncovered in a Moscow archive. Inside were volumes marked with Königsberg's seal, books long thought destroyed. In Polish libraries, too, librarians stumbled across texts from the old collection, some stamped, some handwritten. A map here, a manuscript there. Each find raised the same question: What else might have survived? And so began a quiet, scholarly mystery. No loud headlines, no dramatic scenes, just hushed conversations between historians, quiet cataloging efforts, long letters exchanged between institutions. The hope that somewhere, in a forgotten basement or a sealed crate in an attic, a part of K.O. Nigsberg's library still waits. Even today, researchers occasionally uncover a lost fragment, its edges worn, its ink faded but intact, a piece of memory returned. The city itself is different now. Kaliningrad is modern. Soviet apartment blocks stand where spires once rose. But in corners of the city, some whisper that the past still lingers, that beneath the foundations, the ghosts of scholars walk, that in quiet alleys, the wind still carries the scent of old paper, that in dreams, the lost library calls softly to those who remember. And so the question remains, unanswered but gentle, can knowledge ever truly be destroyed? Or does it simply wait in silence to be found again? While soldiers shivered in foxholes on the Eastern Front, and cities like K.O. or Nigsberg burned under relentless skies far to the west, the war took on a different shape, quieter, more surreal. In the countryside of France, tucked behind wrought iron gates and sheltered by oak-lined roads, the rhythm of war slowed to a peculiar lull. Here, in grand châteaux once owned by aristocratic French families, German officers, particularly those of higher rank, took up residence, not as conquerors in the classical sense, but as guests of a vanished world. They moved into homes built for 18th century nobility, homes with rose gardens, marble floors, and libraries that still smelled of lavender and lemon polish. For these officers, life became a peculiar balancing act. There was war, yes, but not here, not in these velvet-draped rooms. Their days began not with gunfire, but with quiet breakfasts served on porcelain dishes. A maid, often the daughter of the former owners, might bring warm bread and strong coffee to a breakfast table still covered in lace. The morning sunlight streamed through tall windows, illuminating wallpaper that had not changed since the reign of Louis Philippe. Imagine it outside. Soldiers are conducting foot patrols. But inside, the silence is total. The only sound is the slow tick of a gilded clock on the mantel. A dog sleeps in the hallway. A gramophone plays back in the drawing room. The officers dressed in crisp uniforms, immaculately pressed, with boots polished to a dull shine. They read reports, signed requisition forms, drank bitter cognac in the evenings. Some hosted quiet dinner parties with fellow officers, where French wine flowed as easily as the conversation. Others passed their time leafing through books, or writing meticulous letters to wives and mothers back in Munich or Berlin. The war was far away until it wasn't. The resistance, though silent during daylight, was never far. A loose floorboard, a letter smuggled in a pastry box, a missing servant. There were whispers in the kitchen, strange glances from the gardener, small things that unsettled the dreamlike calm. Yet the officers stayed. They preferred the stillness, the illusion of normalcy, and they became part of the strange ecosystem of occupation. The châteaux were not just places of residence. They became centers of administration, occasional interrogation, and quiet control. French officials were summoned for meetings beneath chandeliers. Documents were signed at desks once used for poetry. Maps of Normandy were spread across hand-carved mahogany tables. Battle plans whispered under painted ceilings. Yet still, there were long pauses between the bureaucratic duties. Long hours of nothing. of walking through gardens, hands behind their backs, lost in thought, of watching the slow movement of clouds from a stone balcony, of wine sipped alone at night with only candlelight and the sound of crickets to remind them they were not at home. Some officers, educated and reserved, found the cha tiuk soothing. They enjoyed the quiet, the formality. They treated the spaces with a kind of reverent curiosity, even as they took them over. Others were less restrained. Tapestries went missing. Paintings were removed. Cellars were raided. Antiques packed into crates destined for Berlin. But even then, the veneer remained intact. Dinners were served promptly at 700. Cutlery was silver. Bread was fresh. Linen napkins folded into perfect triangles. A violinist, sometimes hired from a nearby village, played Mozart in the corner of the room. It was a theater of civility against the backdrop of chaos. A performance of European gentility as cities crumbled around them. The French who remained, those allowed to stay on the estates as servants or caretakers, watched in silence. Some cooperated out of necessity. Others resisted in subtle ways. A chipped cup here, a letter delayed there, a missing photograph. No one spoke of loyalty. Everything was implied. Time passed slowly in these places. Seasons shifted without ceremony. Leaves fell in the garden, gathered silently by groundskeepers who never looked the officers in the eye. Snow dusted the rooftops while radios in drawing rooms hummed quietly with news from the front. Evenings grew longer. The wine cellars grew emptier. The music, when played, was softer, and eventually word came. The Allies had landed. Normandy beaches. A change was coming. The illusion began to crack. Officers packed in quiet haste. Records were burned in fireplaces. Portraits wrapped in bed linens. A few tried to make amends, left behind money. Apologies. Most simply left. Some were captured, others vanished. When the French returned to their homes, they found them altered, not destroyed, but changed. Sofas worn down, curtains stained with cigar smoke, books misplaced. A strange sense of memory not their own, and always the silence, the lingering air of something observed, a ghost of formality that no longer belonged. Today, some of these chituks still stand. Some restored, others turned to hotels or museums. Tourists walk through rooms that once housed those distant dinners, unaware of the quiet negotiations and stolen moments that occurred beneath the coffered ceilings. They see velvet. They see chandeliers. But they do not feel the long silence between sips of wine, the tension behind polite conversation, the hush of boots on marble. They do not feel the war pressing in from all sides, even in the calm. And yet, if you stand long enough in one of those rooms, if the window is open and the trees sway gently, you may hear it. Not the clash of armies, not the cries of resistance, but the soft sound of a spoon in a porcelain cup echoing down an empty hallway. A war waged in velvet. It's early. The sky has turned pale gray, and the air tastes like soot and smoke. You've been awake since before dawn, though you barely remember falling asleep. The tent you sleep in is damp and cold, tucked just far enough behind the front to be safe, usually. You're a field nurse in the Red Army. You're 21 years old. The canvas walls flap gently in the wind. Outside, a stove crackles, offering only the faintest warmth. You rub your hands together and begin your day, not with coffee or bread, but by checking if any of the men survived the night. You don't cry anymore. You used to. Not now. The war has no shortage of suffering, and none of it waits for you to be ready. The dressing station is built of wood and reinforced with sandbags. It's half buried into the earth, like the rest of your world. A trench leads from it toward the front line, barely wide enough to move a stretcher through. At any moment, it might flood with meltwater or cave in. You've stopped noticing the cold mud beneath your boots. Inside the makeshift surgery, everything is soaked. Wrappings, stretchers, uniforms. A lantern hangs low from the ceiling, casting yellow light over the stained operating table. Your apron is already stiff with yesterday's grime. Another wave of casualties is due any minute. You wait. You boil instruments, though water is scarce. Soap rarer. There's always the smell of iron and iodine. You wipe your forehead and tuck loose strands of hair under your scarf. Outside, the whistle of artillery rises, then fades. You flinch less now. They arrive on foot or carried by comrades, or pulled on sleds when trucks can't get through. Some walk. Some can't. You don't ask names. You check tags if they still have them. If not, you mark their arms with chalk. There are no surgeons today. He was hit last night. So it's just you and a medical student who has never stitched human skin before. He trembles as he holds the forceps. You don't. You guide his hands without judgment. The men moan. Some scream. Some don't speak at all. You hum quietly under your breath. A lullaby from childhood. Something from before. You wonder if your brother is still alive. He was fighting near Kursk. You haven't heard from him in weeks. Lunch is barley porridge. It's cold before it reaches you. You eat standing up while rinsing a bloodied cloth. There are no breaks. You drink from a tin mug. The tea tastes of smoke and metal. Outside, a column of wounded marches past. Some lean on sticks. Others wear bandages across their faces like blindfolds. One drags a broken boot behind him, the leather flapping uselessly. He nods to you. You nod back. You're not allowed to break down. Not here. At night, you write letters for the dying. You take their words slowly, so carefully. You fold their hopes into plain sentences. You write to wives, to mothers, to daughters. You never mention the smell of gangrene or the moments they beg you to lie. You simply write, he was brave. He did not suffer. But you were there. You saw. You bury some of them. When there's time, you help carry their bodies to the edge of the woods. You place them in crude graves. Sometimes the priest is there. Often, he's not. Sometimes you say a few words yourself, though your voice feels like someone else's. A stranger. The nights are colder now. The sky is darker, even when the moon is full. You keep your coat on when you sleep, but the cold still seeps in. Your cot creaks beneath you. You hear the groans from the wounded tent through the thin walls. They never stop. You dream of home. Of soup with dill. Of your mother's garden. Of bread with butter. You wake with your hands curled into fists. There are rumors of advances. Rumors of retreats. You no longer believe either. You live one day at a time. One wound at a time. Sometimes you smile at the soldiers when they wake. You tell them they'll be fine, that they'll walk again, that they'll go home soon. You tell them even when you know otherwise. They need to believe. And maybe, so do you. The days pass, slow and measured. You repeat the same tasks over and over. Boil water, clean wounds, write letters, bury the dead. Sometimes one of them survives because of you. And sometimes they whisper, "Thank you," before they sleep. You treasure those moments like pearls. But mostly, it is repetition. The rhythm of the war becomes your heartbeat. You forget what peace sounded like, what quiet truly meant, and yet you go on. You go on because there is no one else, because they need you, because, in some way, this small circle of bandages, quiet kindness, and borrowed time is a kind of victory, a defiance against destruction. In the end, you become something else. Not just a nurse, not just a woman. You become the hands that keep men breathing, the voice that comforts, the eyes that witness, and history will forget your name. But the men you held, their pain softened by your presence, will remember, even if only in their final moments. The tent is quiet again. A new day is beginning, and you rise, because you must. The war for you is over, but peace hasn't come. There are no parades, no liberation, no quiet countryside to retreat to. Instead, you find yourself far from home, no longer a soldier, but a prisoner of war. Captured somewhere near Smolensk, you remember the moment clearly. Your rifle was frozen to your fingers, but you dropped it anyway. The Soviet officer didn't speak. He simply pointed. You followed. Now you're in a labor camp somewhere beyond the Urals, or so you've been told. You're not entirely sure where. You were moved by train, then by truck, then on foot. The cold is numbing, the hunger constant. The silence among the prisoners is heavy. The air tastes of rust and ash. It is late autumn. The snow began early this year. The barracks are made of pine logs. Japs between the planks let the wind in. At night, you stuff your coat against the wall, trying to block the worst of the drafts. Your blanket is thin. Sometimes you dream of home, but more often you dream of bread. You share your bunk with a man from Dresden. He used to be a carpenter. He barely speaks now. You both cough often. Everyone does. Every morning. The guards bang on the doors with rifle butts. You line up for roll call. Then you march, slowly, toward the work site. Some days it's a logging operation. Other days, you help dig foundations for new buildings. Occasionally, you're assigned to a quarry. The work is the same repetitive, heavy, silent. The ground is frozen. Your hands crack and bleed. You are always tired. Your rations consist of watery cabbage soup, a heel of dark bread, sometimes a spoonful of groats. On better days, there's a sliver of salted fish. You eat slowly, trying to make the meal last. But hunger returns within the hour. Sometimes a Red Army doctor visits. He speaks in clipped Russian. If you're too sick to work, they isolate you in the infirmary. But you know what that really means. Men who go to the infirmary seldom return. There's little conversation. Many of the men speak in whispers, their voices dulled by frostbite and fatigue. Someone hums a lullaby now, and then a song from the Rhine or Bavaria or the Black Forest. You close your eyes and pretend it's the wind. The guards are not cruel, not exactly. They're distant. Their boots crunch on the gravel paths. Their uniforms are thick and heavy. They carry rifles slung across their backs. Some smoke cheap cigarettes. Others just stare at the sky. Once, a younger soldier gave you an extra ladle of soup. He didn't say anything. You nodded in thanks. He looked away. The seasons change, slowly. Spring brings mud that clings to your legs like weights. Summer brings biting flies and the unbearable scent of sweat and decay. Autumn is just a slow descent into cold again. You count time by injuries. When your back stopped healing. When your tooth cracked. When your friend lost the will to stand. The war may be over, but you are still surviving it. You hear rumors. The Americans have occupied parts of Germany. Berlin is rubble. Hitler is dead. or not. Some say the Soviets will keep the camps open forever. Others say release is coming. You no longer care about truth. You care about waking up each morning. You care about soup. Some nights, you dream of forgiveness. Other nights, of vengeance. But most nights, you dream of home, of your mother's kitchen, the sound of her voice, the way the windows glowed at dusk. You haven't heard your own language spoken kindly in months. Once, a Russian translator visited. He asked for your name, your rank, your unit. You answered truthfully. You had no reason not to. When he left, he said quietly, "Maybe you will go home next year." He looked at you for a long time. Then he walked away. The next day, you found yourself assigned to cleaning the officers' quarters. It was warm inside. There was soap and real bread on a table. You weren't allowed to touch anything. But just for a moment, the smell of yeast and wood polish filled your lungs. You closed your eyes and savored it. That evening, you slept deeper than usual. You don't think of yourself as a soldier anymore, just a man in waiting, a man shaped by frost, by silence, by repetition, a man in a distant land where the sky is enormous and the cold never ends. You know that someday, if you are lucky, you will walk out of this place. You will board a train. You will see forests pass by, and rivers, and the ruins of cities. You will step back into a world that has changed. But for now, you lie still on your wooden bunk, staring at the ceiling beams. The snow begins to fall again, and another year begins. It begins with the wind, a low, whispering breeze, carrying the faintest trace of something foreign, something wrong. You live in a small wooden house in Tokyo's eastern ward, not far from the Sumida River. It's a quiet district, or at least it was. Most of the men are gone, soldiers, conscripts, factory workers. What remains are the elderly, the very young, and women like you. Your house has stood for generations. Rice paper walls, tatami mats, sliding doors that creak in humid weather. There is a persimmon tree in the courtyard. It still blooms, though fewer each year. By 1945, the nights are never fully dark. Air raids have become routine. Each evening, you listen for the drone of engines, the clatter of footsteps down the alley, the eerie moan of sirens. You have grown used to the language of fear. It lives in the pit of your stomach. You keep a bucket of water by the door, sandbags at the edge of the roof. Your few belongings are packed in a wicker basket by your futon. You've practiced how to carry your grandmother on your back, if it comes to that. The raid doesn't begin with sirens. It begins with a hum, like bees behind clouds. The sky is unusually clear tonight. A full moon, pale and unblinking. You step outside and squint upward. What you see are tiny silver specks, slow, steady, deliberate. No sirens. Just fire. Incendiaries drop first. Cylinders that burst open midair, scattering hundreds of magnesium bombs like glowing seeds. They fall silently, like snow. Then the crackling begins. Within moments, your district is a field of flame. You don't run at first. You freeze, watching rooftops ignite like dry kindling. The paper doors curl inward. Smoke blossoms, thick and oily. A soundless heat presses against your face. You remember your mother's instructions. The path to the river. The cloth to cover your mouth. You grab the basket. You lift your grandmother. She is barely conscious, whispering prayers. The alley is narrow. You pass neighbors, some calm, some screaming. A baby cries behind you, but you cannot stop. Embers dance in the air like fireflies. The wooden buildings groan as they collapse. Your sandals melt. The firestorm moves faster than you can imagine. It creates its own wind, pulling oxygen into its core. The air itself becomes a weapon. Roof tiles fly. A telephone pole falls. Sparks stick to your sleeves. You no longer see flames, only red light and smoke. You reach the Sumida River. Thousands are already there. Silent, shivering, scorched. Some are in the water. Some cling to its banks. Some press wet cloths over their heads. You wade in waist deep. The river is cold, black, and smells of ash. You hold your grandmother tightly. Her breathing is shallow. You don't speak. Around you, the city burns. From above, the pilots see only fire. A carpet of it. Tokyo is wood and paper, perfect kindling. The mission was calculated, not rushed. A grid pattern. A fire every 50 meters. Explosives first. Then napalm. Then silence. The fire consumes everything it touches. Schools, shops, temples, pets, letters, shoes, names. You stay in the water until morning. By then, the city has changed. There is no breeze, no birds. The sun rises behind a wall of smoke. What's left is gray and strange. Buildings no longer stand. Trees are just black fingers. The smell is unforgettable. Charred wood, scorched metal. Something you don't have words for. You find your street. It's gone. The persimmon tree has fallen. The stones at the temple gate are cracked. The city is quiet, not peaceful, but emptied. You help your grandmother sit beneath a stone arch that somehow survived. She falls asleep with her hands in her lap, palms up. You sit beside her, watching people wander like ghosts. You do not cry. Instead, you begin collecting. Anything. Nails, cloth, a shoe sole. You hear someone say the army will bring rice. Someone else mentions the emperor. Another person is just repeating the word, why? Eventually, night falls again. You lie on the earth. The stars are dim, but visible. The wind has changed direction. You think of a time before war, when the loudest sound at night was the laughter of your neighbors or the wind through shoji doors. You try to remember a song your mother used to sing. You fall asleep humming. You are 21 years old, and the ocean has become your home. The steel hull surrounds you like a coffin, yet you feel strangely safe inside it. The U-boat is narrow, barely wide enough for two men to pass each other. The air is thick with diesel, sweat, and the sharp scent of metal. You have not seen the sun in 6 days. You've been assigned to U-96, a Type VIC submarine, patrolling the cold waters of the North Atlantic. It is 1942, and the war is at full churn. But here, in this silent world beneath the waves, time feels suspended. You live not by the sun or moon, but by shifts, alarms, and the occasional knock on the shoulder from a superior officer telling you it's time to work or to sleep. There are 50 men aboard the boat, and fewer beds than people. You sleep in shifts, rotating among warm, cramped bunks still carrying the scent of the last man. In your bunk, condensation drips from the pipes. You use your coat as a blanket. You always sleep with your boots on. Every surface inside the boat is used. Canned food is stacked along the passageways. Fresh eggs are tied into nets above the torpedoes. Even your toothbrush has a designated slot, shared with 2 others. Hygiene is minimal. Showers are impossible. Your face itches from stubble and salt. A film of sweat coats your skin, and the smell of unwashed bodies hangs in the air like a permanent fog. Meals are eaten quickly and without ceremony. Sometimes it's black bread and canned cheese. Sometimes potatoes, or sausage if you're lucky. You drink water that tastes faintly of rust. Coffee is a powder mixed with lukewarm liquid. There is no sugar. On especially grim days, the cook hands out barley soup that sloshes across the bowl as the boat tilts. The boat is always moving, gently rocking when surfaced, swaying when submerged. But sometimes the motion is sharp, sudden, jarring. You've learned to brace yourself in your sleep. You dream not of peace, but of pressure, of alarms. Silence is survival. When surfaced, the crew speaks in hushed tones. When submerged, all sound is minimized, boots removed, voices dropped to whispers, doors handled gently. You learn to hear the world through vibrations. The slow churn of the propellers, the hum of the battery, the soft ping of sonar from some distant enemy above. Each man has a job. You are a sonar operator. Your ears are your tools. You sit for hours with the headphones on, listening for changes in the ocean's song. A distant screw turning, a ping returning, the eerie silence of a depth charge moments before detonation. Sleep comes in fragments. 4 hours here, 2 there. Always interrupted by drill or danger. When the alarm sounds, you rush to your station without thinking. Your boots hit the floor. Your hands know what to do. You don't ask questions. Depth charges are the worst. They fall like iron rain, unseen, thudding into the deep, then bursting in violent, muffled thunder. The entire boat shudders. Dust falls from the ceiling. Lights flicker. Sometimes pipes crack, hissing steam. You clutch the edge of your bunk or brace against a wall. Your stomach clenches. Your ears ring. But if the boat holds, the silence returns. Everyone breathes again. You have not seen land in weeks. Occasionally, the captain allows the men a few minutes on the deck. When surfaced, you climb the narrow ladder, push open the hatch, and step into the night air. The cold wind cuts through your coat. The stars look close enough to touch. You inhale deeply, the first breath of unsalted, unsweaty air in days. You watch the moonlight dance on the waves. The sea is calm. For a moment, the war feels distant. The stars seem eternal. The boat creaks beneath your feet. Then the call comes. Below decks. And you climb back down into the heat and shadows. Time is strange down here. You mark it by log entries and sonar pings. By coffee breaks and engine failures. Your beard grows. Your hands chap and split. You see the same faces every hour of every day. Friendships form through silent nods, shared jokes, the passing of a spoon. You stop dreaming. One night, a sailor recites a poem from memory, something by Goethe. His voice is soft, uncertain. The others listen in silence, eyes closed. No one speaks afterward. The hum of the motor resumes. A spoon clinks on a tin mug. You wonder if you'll ever see your mother again. You remember the red brick of your childhood home, the smell of wood smoke, the laughter of your sister. You tuck those memories away, deep in your mind, like precious cargo stored in a watertight hold. The patrol continues. You dive, you surface, you wait. Beneath the surface, war moves slowly. It wears you down not with sound, but with silence. Not with motion, but with repetition. And still, the ocean stretches endlessly in every direction, deep, dark, and quiet. You are 21 years old, and the ocean has become your home. The steel hull surrounds you like a coffin, yet you feel strangely safe inside it. The U-boat is narrow, barely wide enough for 2 men to pass each other. The air is thick with diesel, sweat, and the sharp scent of metal. You have not seen the sun in 6 days. You've been assigned to U-96, a Type VRCC submarine patrolling the cold waters of the North Atlantic. It is 1942, and the war is at full churn. But here, in this silent world beneath the waves, time feels suspended. You live not by the sun or moon, but by shifts, alarms, and the occasional knock on the shoulder from a superior officer telling you it's time to work or to sleep. There are 50 men aboard the boat, and fewer beds than people. You sleep in shifts, rotating among warm, cramped bunks still carrying the scent of the last man. In your bunk, condensation drips from the pipes. You use your coat as a blanket. You always sleep with your boots on. Every surface inside the boat is used. Canned food is stacked along the passageways. Fresh eggs are tied into nets above the torpedoes. Even your toothbrush has a designated slot, shared with 2 others. Hygiene is minimal. Showers are impossible. Your face itches from stubble and salt. A film of sweat coats your skin, and the smell of unwashed bodies hangs in the air like a permanent fog. Meals are eaten quickly and without ceremony. Sometimes it's black bread and canned cheese. Sometimes potatoes or sausage if you're lucky. You drink water that tastes faintly of rust. Coffee is a powder mixed with lukewarm liquid. There is no sugar. On especially grim days, the cook hands out barley soup that sloshes across the bowl as the boat tilts. The boat is always moving, gently rocking when surfaced, swaying when submerged. But sometimes the motion is sharp, sudden, jarring. You've learned to brace yourself in your sleep. You dream not of peace, but of pressure, of alarms. Silence is survival. When surfaced, the crew speaks in hushed tones. When submerged, all sound is minimized, boots removed, voices dropped to whispers, doors handled gently. You learn to hear the world through vibrations. The slow churn of the propellers, the hum of the battery, the soft ping of sonar from some distant enemy above. Each man has a job. You are a sonar operator. Your ears are your tools. You sit for hours with the headphones on, listening for changes in the ocean's song. A distant screw turning, a ping returning, the eerie silence of a depth charge moments before detonation. Sleep comes in fragments. 4 hours here, 2 there, always interrupted by drill or danger. When the alarm sounds, you rush to your station without thinking. Your boots hit the floor. Your hands know what to do. You don't ask questions. Depth charges are the worst. They fall like iron rain, unseen, thudding into the deep, then bursting in violent, muffled thunder. The entire boat shudders. Dust falls from the ceiling. Lights flicker. Sometimes pipes crack, hissing steam. You clutch the edge of your bunk or brace against a wall. Your stomach clenches. Your ears ring. But if the boat holds, the silence returns. Everyone breathes again. You have not seen land in weeks. Occasionally, the captain allows the men a few minutes on the deck when surfaced. You climb the narrow ladder, push open the hatch, and step into the night air. The cold wind cuts through your coat. The stars look close enough to touch. You inhale deeply, the first breath of unsalted, unsweaty air in days. You watch the moonlight dance on the waves. The sea is calm. For a moment, the war feels distant. The stars seem eternal. The boat creaks beneath your feet. Then the call comes. Below decks. And you climb back down into the heat and shadows. Time is strange down here. You mark it by log entries and sonar pings, by coffee breaks and engine failures. Your beard grows. Your hands chap and split. You see the same faces every hour of every day. Friendships form through silent nods, shared jokes, the passing of a spoon. You stop dreaming. One night, a sailor recites a poem from memory. Something by Goethe. His voice is soft, uncertain. The others listen in silence. Eyes closed. No one speaks afterward. The hum of the motor resumes. A spoon clinks on a tin mug. You wonder if you'll ever see your mother again. You remember the red brick of your childhood home, the smell of wood smoke, the laughter of your sister. You tuck those memories away, deep in your mind, like precious cargo stored in a watertight hold. The patrol continues. You dive. You surface. You wait. Beneath the surface, war moves slowly. It wears you down not with sound, but with silence. Not with motion, but with repetition. And still, the ocean stretches endlessly in every direction, deep, dark, and quiet. Now imagine a bakery in the heart of Paris in the winter of 1942. The shelves are bare. The windows are fogged. The scent of yeast and burnt crust lingers only faintly, like a memory of the bread that used to be. You are the baker's apprentice, 17 years old, and you've come in before dawn, as always, to start a day without flour. You sweep the floor that has not seen fresh grain in days. You stir a pot of ersatz coffee made from acorns and chicory. There is a line at the door already, though you have little to offer. Outside, the sky is still a dark blue haze. Snow has fallen in the night, layering the city in a soft hush that hides the tension underneath. Life under occupation is built on caution and silence. German soldiers pass by the bakery window twice each morning, rifles slung lazily over their shoulders. Some stop in to demand pastries. There are none. Others just walk by. The uniforms have become part of the scenery, like the cold, like the scarcity. You spend your day kneading what little dough you have, stretching it with powdered milk and chestnut flour. Sometimes you bake loaves filled with mashed potatoes or grated turnips to fill them out. The people who buy them nod, pay, and leave. Everyone talks much. Everyone looks tired. Your ration card determines what you can eat: a few ounces of sugar per week, a few slices of cheese. You stand in lines that stretch for blocks, hoping the delivery hasn't been delayed again. Meat is rare. Real butter, unheard of. You eat slowly now, mechanically. You chew without thought. Whispers of the resistance come through the back alley, in the dark. Leaflets appear, then disappear again. Sometimes the baker quietly delivers loaves that are heavier than they should be. You do not ask why. On Sundays, you attend Mass. The church is cold and sparsely filled. You sit on the wooden pew and stare at stained glass windows dimmed by dust and time. The priest speaks in low tones, often pausing mid-sentence when a pair of black boots echoes from outside. Once, you walked along the sign and saw a crowd standing still as German officers removed a man from a line. No one spoke. You kept walking. You never saw the man again. Despite it all, life goes on. Children still play, though their clothes are too small. A violin plays from a nearby window at dusk. You read the same newspaper over and over, more out of habit than hope. People marry. Babies are born. The baker still rises before the sun. And you are there beside him, stretching dough that doesn't rise, crafting loaves no one really wants, feeding a city that holds its breath and waits. Outside, snow falls again, quiet, gentle, muffling the city in its cold white silence. Another day ends, and tomorrow you'll rise again, apron dusted with flour that barely covers your hunger. You're 16, maybe 17, and the world is already burning. You live in Berlin, and the city breathes smoke. In the distance, sirens wail. You've just finished a plate of watery stew in a communal hall. A badge on your sleeve identifies you as part of the Luftwaffe Fleckhelfer program. You're not quite a soldier, not officially, but every night you climb to a rooftop or a flak tower or a makeshift wooden platform, and you wait for the sky to fill with bombers. The air is always cold up here. Even in spring, the wind bites through your thin wool coat. You wear gloves with the fingers cut off to better handle the metal casings. Your boots are stiff, slightly too big, passed down from another boy. The metal of the gun barrel is always cold when your fingers brush it, no matter the season. You serve alongside older men, conscripts, and wounded veterans. Some are quiet, some are sharp-tongued, some are simply tired. They call you Junge, boy. Sometimes, when the night is still and the boredom stretches too long, they hand you a cigarette. You take it, hold it awkwardly, puff without knowing exactly why. The smoke steadies your nerves, but it also burns your throat. Your job is to load shells, to pass tools, to record firing coordinates, to watch the skies. The Americans come at night, the British too. You hear them before you see them, the deep, heavy drone of engines, miles off but closing in. Sometimes the ground beneath you vibrates slightly as the waves begin to arrive. You look up. You see nothing at first, just clouds backlit by searchlights. Then the blinking lights appear, tiny, slow, moving specks drifting steadily overhead, too high to see clearly, too quiet to strike on their own. But they bring with them the rain of iron and fire. The order is shouted. Movements become automatic. Shells are passed down the line. The gun swings into place. The air is filled with sudden, violent light. You feel the concussive thump of each shot fired beside you. Your ears ring. Your hands work without thinking. The sky flashes white and orange as flak explodes mid-air, bursting like blossoms around the invisible aircraft. You do not know if you hit anything. It hardly matters. You fire again. And again. The gun jams, it's cleared. The rhythm continues. One of the men curses quietly. Another laughs at something you didn't catch. Above, the bombs begin to fall. You hear them land in the distance. Dull, echoing booms that send tremors through the city blocks. You think of your mother asleep in a basement. You think of your old school, of the park where you used to play. And then it's over, for now. The all-clear sirens wail again. You lower the barrels. Unspent shells are counted, empty casings collected. Your shoulders ache. Your legs feel hollow. It is nearly dawn. You walk home in the early light, past buildings whose walls lean awkwardly, past courtyards filled with ash. The tram tracks are bent in one place. The old statue in the square is missing its head. A baker's shop is gone, just a blackened frame. You walk past it without stopping. Your mother greets you with tea made from fruit peels. There is no sugar. She has folded your blanket neatly at the end of your cot. The room smells faintly of soap and coal smoke. You collapse into the blanket without removing your boots. Sleep pulls you down quickly. Later that day, when the sun is high, you attend a brief lesson in a converted cellar. Your teacher's voice is soft. The chalk squeaks on the board. No one talks much. The classroom used to be a wine cellar, and the walls still smell faintly of mildew. You copy notes about empire and loyalty without listening. You receive a notice that evening. Your name is on a list. You will be reassigned to another battery near the outskirts of the city. More activity there, they say. A better chance to serve. You nod. You fold the paper. You don't tell your mother. The following night, you return to the tower. Everything is the same. The wind, the cold, the machinery. You stare into the sky and try to predict where the next specks of light will appear. You light a cigarette with trembling hands. You think of your brother, already gone. You wonder how much longer this can go on. But mostly, you wait. And when the sirens begin again and the flak begins to thump upward once more, you return to the rhythm. Load. Fire. Watch. Wait, this is your war now. A war of sky and smoke. A war of sleepless nights and gray dawns. A war that has made you older than you are. In the quiet hills of Tuscany, where vineyards stretch across the slopes and olive trees dot the landscape like old gray sentinels, the war comes not with thunder, but with boots. You are a tenant farmer's daughter, barely 20. The war is something distant, until the spring of 1944, when everything begins to unravel. Your home is a stone farmhouse outside the village of Sant Andrea. The rooms are small and cool, with thick walls that keep out the summer heat. Chickens wander in the courtyard. The fields are overgrown, and your father's back no longer bends as it once did. The men are gone, called away to serve or hiding in the hills. You rise early, as always, to bake bread in the wood, fired oven. The dough is thin. You've replaced most of the flour with chestnut meal, coarse and sweet. It doesn't rise properly, but it fills the stomach. You carry water in copper pails from the spring near the grove. You tend the garden. Parsley, fava beans, some straggling tomatoes. There is no meat unless something is trapped. Eggs are rare and traded. You mend clothes that have been mended too many times already. Your hands are calloused from scrubbing, from weeding, from wringing water out of linen. You've stopped noticing the ache. By now, soldiers pass regularly along the road, German patrols mostly, with their crisp uniforms and unreadable expressions. They sometimes take chickens. Once, they took your cousin's bicycle. They always carry themselves like the land belongs to them, even though everyone knows that it doesn't. The village square has changed. Windows are boarded. The priest no longer rings the bell for mass. People speak in whispers, especially when strangers arrive. You hear talk of partisans, men and women living in the forests, attacking supply lines, helping the Allies. You don't know any, or you pretend not to. One afternoon, an American reconnaissance plane passes overhead, low and slow. You watch it glint in the sun. Later that week, there's an explosion in the distance. The sky turns gray with dust. A munitions truck was ambushed on the mountain road, someone says. The Germans retaliate by taking hostages from a nearby hamlet. No one speaks of what happens next, but the church fills with candles. You begin to store food in odd places, in jars under floorboards, in hollowed-out logs in the barn's rafters, just in case. You no longer light candles at night. Smoke could be seen from the road. You sew together a small pouch and wear it under your blouse inside. A picture of your brother, a bit of salt, a key. Sometimes, you walk to the monastery to visit the old nuns. They grow herbs in a garden behind the walls. Rosemary, sage, lavender. The air smells of stone and thyme. One of the sisters gives you waxed paper for preserving cheese. Another gives you a small tin of salve for your cracked hands. You leave with a quiet blessing and the strange sensation of peace. At dusk, you help your father bring in the goats. The path winds through a stand of cypress trees, and the shadows lengthen quickly. You hear owls begin to call. From a nearby ridge Gunfire echoes faintly, sharp but distant. You both say nothing. At night, the countryside seems impossibly dark. The stars are the only light. You lie on your straw mattress and listen to the wind move through the shutters. Once, long ago, you imagined yourself in Florence, working in a shop, reading novels by candlelight. Now, your dreams are smaller a day without fear. A loaf of warm bread, the return of spring without the echo of boots. In late April, the front line begins to shift. The Allies are advancing. The German patrols grow more nervous, more aggressive. One morning, your neighbor's barn burns. No one knows why. Or maybe everyone does. And then, one morning, they are simply gone. You wake to silence. The kind of silence that hums strangely with absence. No voices, no engines, no shouting. Just birdsong and the soft rustle of the trees. The village gathers slowly, cautiously. Someone raises a flag from a shuttered window. Another begins to sing a hymn. The war is not over, not yet. But here on this hillside, in this corner of Tuscany, it has passed. The olive trees still stand. The goats still bleat. And you, still young but no longer innocent, kneel by the well and draw up clear, cold water. The sun filters gently through the leaves. You close your eyes. And for the first time in months, you breathe. Now shift your thoughts beneath the waves, where no sunlight reaches, and the world feels like it's folded inward. You're aboard a German U-boat in the middle of the Atlantic, 1943. It's not the dramatic chase of submarine films or the roaring silence of explosions. It's long hours of listening, waiting, and slowly losing your sense of time. The hull surrounds you in cold, damp steel. It smells like oil and rust, with a constant undercurrent of stale air and unwashed men. Your bunk is barely wider than your shoulders and is shared, hot, bunked, with another crewman who uses it when you're on duty. The blanket is always warm when you slip in, but it never feels comforting. You sleep next to torpedoes. They rest quietly in their cradles like long, silent beasts. Above you, the ceiling is low. Most of the men cannot stand fully upright. Your knees bump into pipes. Your elbows bruise on bulkheads. You move like a ghost, careful half turned sideways to squeeze past crewmates, always ducking. Your days follow no rhythm. Watches change in strange, uneven hours. Sometimes you are awoken not by alarm, but by the sound of depth charges far away. Dull, distant thumps that sound like fists pounding on the hull of the sea. You listen. Everyone listens. There is no shouting, no panic. Just silence. Waiting. On good days, the sea is calm and the boat cruises at periscope depth, engines humming softly. You clean parts, check gauges, and jot numbers in logbooks. Sometimes the captain lets you peer through the scope. You see nothing but water. A vast, endless gray, green world stretching in all directions. Meals are bland and irregular. Early in the patrol, you have fresh bread, maybe sausages. After a week or two, it's all canned meat, pickled vegetables, and dark, hard rye. You drink tea brewed from what tastes like moss. The cook does what he can, but the smell of cabbage never leaves the galley. The head, the bathroom, is a tiny compartment at the bow. You must pump the contents out manually, a procedure that's been known to go horribly wrong if done at the wrong depth. Most men hold it in for as long as they can. Cleanliness is a dream. You wash your face with a rag and a bowl of brackish water. Your beard grows in patches. Everyone smells the same. When submerged, the air thickens with carbon dioxide. Your lungs adjust, but headaches come easily. Lights are dimmed to save power. The only sounds are whispers, engine vibrations, the occasional creak of the hull shifting under pressure. You forget what sunlight feels like. Time moves strangely. You lose track of days. Sometimes, there are books passed between bunks. Pocket novels, dog-eared and yellow. A few men play chess using pieces carved from bits of metal. A harmonica appears once, but it's quickly banned. Too loud. Noise discipline is absolute. When you surface at night, the hatch opens to crisp, freezing air. The deck is slick with salt. The sky above you is dark and endless, stars sharper than you've ever seen them. For a moment, you feel like you're on a different planet, floating between two worlds. The captain stands at the conning tower, scanning the horizon. Orders are quiet clipped. Then you slip below again. The hatch closes. Silence returns. Sometimes you attack. You hear the call, "Alarm!" Red lights flashed. The sub dives fast. Depth gauges spin. Orders fly quietly, efficiently. You lie on your bunk, heart pounding, as the boat creaks like an old tree under strain. The hull shudders as charges drop, closer, louder. Water drips from a pipe above your head. You say nothing. One day, your patrol ends. You return to harbor, a cold inlet lined with concrete pens. You step onto solid ground, legs shaky, skin pale. You squint at the daylight, unsure whether it's real. You are given 2 days leave in a quiet coastal town. You spend most of it sleeping, though your dreams are still underwater. The hotel bed feels too wide, too soft. You return to the base, back to the sub. Another patrol begins. The sea waits, and so it continues. Day after day, dive, rise, wait. The pressure becomes normal. The quiet a comfort. Your life reduced to meters, bearings, battery levels. You forget what trees look like. You no longer fear the deep. You begin to belong to it. And when you sleep, rocked gently by the swell, lulled by the dull thrum of engines, you imagine the surface. Distant, flat, unreachable. And you drift. Now imagine a coastal cliff on the eastern edge of England. The sea rolls gently below, slate, colored and endless. It's 1941, and you are a radar operator stationed in a Royal Air Force listening post. A squat, reinforced structure built into the edge of the wind-whipped land. Your days are quiet, eerily so. The war feels distant here, and yet it flows invisibly through the screens and signals you monitor. You are surrounded by vast fields, scattered sheep, and the briny scent of the sea. But inside the bunker, everything is dim and buzzing. Each morning begins the same. You rise from your cot in a concrete dormitory that always feels damp. The air smells of mildew and hot tea. You dress in layers. Wool shirt, thick trousers, a heavy sweater. Because the bunker never really warms up. Your boots echo softly as you descend into the operations room, where the machines await. The radar equipment hums at a constant pitch, a mechanical lullaby that fills the silence. You sit before a round green screen, marked with faint lines like the face of a clock. A thin white beam sweeps in slow circles. Most of the time, there's nothing. Just the empty sea returning silence. When something does appear, a blip, a shimmer, it is often a bird or a distant fishing boat. You log it anyway. Every mark is recorded. Bearings, speed, estimated altitude. Hours pass without words. The only noise is the occasional radio squawk or the tapping of typewriter keys. The routine is meditative. Every hour, a new sweep. Every shift, a new log. You drink tea from a dented mug and eat biscuits that are slightly stale. Occasionally, a supply truck brings more food, tins of corned beef, Powdered eggs, sacks of potatoes. Fresh fruit is rare. Milk even rarer. You make do. The other operators are quiet, like you. There's Private Jenkins, who barely speaks, and Sergeant Malone, who used to be a schoolteacher and now recites poems to himself during breaks. Conversation, when it happens, is slow and sparse. You talk about weather sheep, and once, the strange phosphorescent glow you saw in the sky. No one believes it. Outside, the wind never stops. It whips across the cliffs, rattling the antennae and tugging at the signal wires. When your shift ends, you walk to the edge of the compound and watch the waves. The horizon is always gray. Seagulls wheel above. Sometimes, when the sky is clear, you think you can see all the way to Norway. There are nights when the alerts come in. You hear the dull clatter of boots as officers enter the bunker. Eyes serious. You turn up the volume. Signals sharpen. You call out headings and watch as distant echoes grow stronger. Aircraft, many of them. You radio the nearest command post. Moments later, the sky above you comes alive with the distant thrum of Spitfires scrambling from a nearby airfield. You don't see the battle. You only hear the faint crackle of communication and the fading sound of engines. Afterward, you return to silence. You clear the logs, reset the screens. You sip tea in the same corner. The moment passes. Sometimes you think of home, of city life before the war. The bustle of streets, the scent of bakeries, the feel of sunlight on your face without the sting of salt air. But here, you've learned to embrace the stillness. There's something comforting about the repetition, about knowing exactly what each day will bring. You read the same books over and over. You mend your socks. You write letters you never send. And at night, in your narrow bunk, you lie awake listening to the wind and the steady, low buzz of machines below. You are a watcher, a listener, a quiet guardian scanning the silence. And as you drift into sleep, the radar screen continues its endless sweep, round and round, in patient circles, searching for shadows that may never come. Now picture the long, empty steppe of Western Russia. Flat, snow, dusted land stretching as far as the eye can see, broken only by the skeletal outlines of trees and the distant curves of a railroad track. It's 1942, and you are a field nurse in the Soviet Red Army, assigned to a mobile medical station behind the front lines near Stalingrad. The wind carries a bitter chill, and each breath of air stings your throat. The makeshift hospital is a row of tents and wooden barracks, hastily erected along the side of the frozen track. Your quarters are shared with 7 other women. Your uniforms are identical heavy canvas coats, fur-lined hats, and boots that never quite dry. The day begins in darkness. Always, you wake to the muffled clatter of stretcher, bearers outside, boots crunching on ice. There's a moment of stillness before the work begins. A sip of hot water steeped with black leaves, a bite of stale rye bread, a prayer muttered under breath. Then it starts. The injured arrive in waves, carried in by truck, sled, or on foot. Their faces are gray. Their clothes are frozen stiff. You remove boots carefully, sometimes cutting them away. Frostbite is common, and the smell of infection hangs faintly in the cold air, sweet, sickly, and ever present. Inside the tent, there is no heat, only body warmth and the occasional flicker of a kerosene lamp. You wrap wounds, change dressings, administer morphine when available. Most of the time, there is none. Your hands are always cold, even through your gloves. You've learned to work quickly and with little emotion. There are never enough supplies. You sterilize gauze over open flames, reuse bandages, stitch wounds with thread you boil yourself. You ration everything: alcohol, cotton, iodine. When it runs out, you improvise. Sometimes the men call you sister. Sometimes they call for their mothers. Most are silent. You become used to silence. It weighs heavier than screams. Between waves of casualties, you scrub metal trays with snow and scrub your hands with what little soap you can find. You sweep the floors of dried mud and blood. You make beds with stiff, thin blankets and fold letters found in pockets. You send them to be burned or delivered. You never read them. At night, you write your own. Letters home that speak only of weather, of the food, never of what you really see. You tell your mother you're well, that the snow is beautiful, that you are strong. You learn to sleep in fits. 10 minutes here, a half hour there. You sleep in your coat, your boots beside your bed. Sometimes you wake to gunfire, sometimes to silence, which can be worse. The landscape never changes. The steppe remains still. A few trees sway under the wind, black branches etched against a white sky. The trains come and go. Sometimes they bring supplies, sometimes more wounded, sometimes nothing. You make tea from dried apple peel. You carve buttons from bone. You sing to yourself quietly while sewing. Old folk songs from childhood that no longer feel real. And then there are the moments between. The soldier who gives you his only chocolate ration in thanks. The quiet nod from a boy no older than your brother, who lost a leg and now insists on helping with chores. The way the sun hits the icicles outside the window for a brief moment at noon, making them glow like glass. These moments do not heal the war, but they soften its edge, if only slightly. You survive each day not through strength, but repetition, through the rhythm of care, through doing what must be done, again and again, no matter the weather, no matter the cold, no matter the number of wounded lined up outside the tent. And as night falls once more, you sit beside a flickering lamp with needle and thread, repairing the same uniform coat you've worn for months. Outside, the steppe stretches out in every direction, indifferent and eternal. You sleep knowing tomorrow will bring the same, and the day after that, until the war decides otherwise. Now imagine a dry, empty patch of earth somewhere in the Arizona desert. It is 1943, and the sun has just begun to rise over a sprawl of low barracks surrounded by fencing and watchtowers. This is the Gila River Relocation Center, one of 10 internment camps built by the United States government to house over 100 Zalozan Japanese Americans during the war. You are a school teacher here, 5 years old, once a librarian in San Francisco, now interned, along with your family. Each day begins with the same noise, a clang of metal from the mess hall kitchen, a call for breakfast. The gravel path outside crunches beneath the sandals of early risers. The heat has not yet crept in, and for a short time, the air is cool and still. Your room is in Barrack 8, Block 31, shared with your sister and 2 nephews, partitioned only by hanging blankets. The walls are thin plywood. The floor is dusty. There is no insulation, no running water. In the summer, it's blistering. In winter, bitterly cold. You've learned to keep your shoes by your head at night, so scorpions don't crawl inside. You dress simply, a cotton dress you've mended 3 times, a sun hat. You carry a satchel with a few notebooks and pencils. The schoolhouse is a repurposed shed at the edge of the compound, where rows of children wait in quiet lines. Many of them do not understand why they're here. You try not to explain. You teach English and arithmetic to students aged 7 to 14. The classroom has no real desks, just crates and benches. You write on a slate board with crumbling chalk and hand out copied worksheets you made with carbon paper. Supplies are scarce. Every pencil is precious. Every blank page is saved. Outside, the desert stretches to the horizon. Dry brush, cracked earth, the shimmer of heat. Sometimes distant dust storms roll in, filling the sky with a yellow haze. The windows rattle. Everything is coated in grit. You sweep constantly. It never stays clean. In the afternoons, when school ends, you volunteer at the tiny library. 3 shelves of donated books, mostly old-school readers and worn novels. A small group of adults gather there to read quietly. Others play Go or shogi near the fence line, watched by guards in towers. No one talks to the guards. Your parents are older, and they spend most of the day indoors. Your mother crochets endlessly, her fingers moving automatically, even when she isn't fully awake. Your father walks laps around the block to keep his legs strong. He doesn't complain, but you notice the way his shoulders slump a little more each week. Food is served in communal mess halls: rice, canned peaches, powdered eggs. Occasionally, a shipment brings vegetables grown in camp gardens: radishes, onions, squash. The taste of something fresh is a rare joy. You eat in silence, often beside neighbors you've known for years, now confined beside you. Letters are censored, incoming and outgoing. You write carefully, always mindful. You receive a package from a former colleague, books and hard candy. You share both with your students. Sunday is quieter. There is a Buddhist service in the morning, then laundry in tubs with hand soap and cold water. You help wash your family's clothes in silence, your hands red and raw from scrubbing. Later, you read under the shadow of a mesquite tree until the sun begins to set. You dream often of the library, of silence filled only by turning pages, of shelves tall enough to require ladders, of city streets and cable cars and the fog of the bay. You miss the sound of rain. You miss privacy. The nights in camp are still. The desert cools quickly. The air carries a hint of sagebrush and dry sand. You hear the soft clink of dishes from distant barracks, the occasional creak of footsteps on gravel. Someone strums a guitar near the mess hall. Someone else sings low in Japanese. You sit by the window with your journal and write out tomorrow's lesson plan. You've begun teaching poetry. Something small to hold on to. Something that still feels like yours. And when the lights are turned off and the voices fade, you lie in bed listening to the wind. You think of time differently now, not in days, but in fragments, in moments, in the quiet ritual of teaching, the act of reading, the small dignity of giving children something to learn when everything else has been taken. Outside, the stars burn brightly above the desert. Inside, the barracks are hushed. Sleep comes slowly, but it comes. Now picture yourself far below the surface of the North Atlantic in the belly of a German U-boat. Sometime in early 1943, you are the second watch officer aboard U-96, and you've just awakened in your bunk beneath the torpedo rack. The ceiling is so low you can't sit upright. The stale air tastes faintly of diesel, cabbage, and unwashed bodies. There are 52 men aboard, and nowhere near that many places to sleep. The rhythm of submarine life is unlike anything on land. There is no night or day, only duty and rest. The lights remain dim and yellowed, giving everything a sickly cast. You rise for your shift and maneuver past sleeping legs and hanging laundry to reach the control room. The corridor is barely shoulder wide. You've grown used to the tightness. Everything here is routine, precise, subtle. You know the exact number of seconds it takes for the engines to fully stop. You know the quiet ticking of the navigation station, the faint clatter of tools from the engine compartment. You even know the creak of the hull under pressure. A sound you try to ignore. The temperature varies wildly. Near the engines, it's sweltering. Near the bow, it's freezing. Condensation drips from the ceiling constantly, forming little rivulets that soak your uniform. Mold creeps into the corners. Socks hang from overhead pipes, slowly drying. It always smells a bit like old cheese. You haven't seen sunlight in 9 days. The cook, known as Fritz, hands you a tin bowl of barley soup and a wedge of dark bread. It's warm, if not tasty. The food was decent early in the patrol, when the potatoes were still good. Now everything is tinned. Spam, sauerkraut, coffee made from roasted barley. Fresh water is rationed, so you rarely shave and you only bathe when it rains topside. Your shift is 6 hours long, and you'll spend it monitoring instruments, logging positions, and listening to the radio for updates from command. The captain says little, but you trust him. He's quiet, focused. He sleeps less than any of you. Once, during depth charges, you saw him gripping the bulkhead with white knuckles, whispering to himself. The silence is both your ally and your enemy. At periscope depth, you can hear the faint hum of enemy propellers. The trick is knowing whether they're merchant ships or destroyers. You listen carefully, wearing headphones that buzz and hiss softly in your ears. Sometimes the surface world sounds close enough to touch. Sometimes you mistake your own heartbeat for a threat. When you're submerged, the pressure is constant, not just on the hull, but in your mind. Every ping of sonar, every splash from above, tightens the muscles along your spine. You learn to breathe slowly, to wait, to stay still. Sleep comes in bursts, never deeply. You're awakened often, by drills, by alarms, by smells. The smell of oil means trouble. The smell of salt means someone forgot to seal a valve. Once, you woke to the taste of metal in the air, battery acid from a leak. That night, you slept sitting up, boots on, ready to surface at a moment's notice. Still, there are calm days, long stretches with no contact. You pass the time playing chess with bottle caps or reading faded pulp novels passed from bunk to bunk. The pages are soft from so many hands. You reread the same paragraph again and again. You write letters in your head that you'll never send. You've grown close to the others, not through conversation, but through quiet routine. The same way soldiers do in trenches. You know who snores, who mutters in their sleep, who always asks for seconds. The young radioman hums when he's nervous. The chief engineer carries a photo of his dog, tucked into the edge of a pressure gauge. Occasionally, you surface at night to recharge the batteries. The hatch opens, and the sea air floods in like a blessing. You climb the ladder and stand under the stars. The cold wind stings your face. It smells of salt and steel and sky. Sometimes, distant searchlights sweep the clouds. You feel impossibly small. And then you descend again, back into the creaking, humming, breathing hull. Back into the quiet war fought with dials and decisions. There are no headlines down here. No glory. Just a long, slow crawl through black water. You don't think about the ships you've sunk. You record the tonnage. You log the location, and you move on. As your shift ends, you squeeze past a pair of men playing cards in the mess. The corridor is tight, the lights dim. The air is warm and heavy. You crawl into your bunk, shift the blanket over your shoulder, and close your eyes to the faint, endless hum of engines and the pulse of machines. Sleep finds you, shallow but welcome. The boat continues forward, deep in silence, beneath a world at war. Now, imagine yourself in the Soviet Union. Not on the battlefield, not among the Red Army, but deep in the interior, in a textile factory outside Sverdlovsk in the harsh winter of 1943. You are a young woman, 18 years old, and this is your second year working the night shift. Your hands are rough from cold, your boots 2 sizes too large, and you are still adjusting to the new rhythm of wartime life. The factory bell rings at dusk, though you can barely tell the difference between day and night. Snow falls in clumps against the windows, blurring the world outside. You stamp your feet at the entrance to shake off the ice, wrap your shawl tighter, and head toward your station among the looms. The building is drafty, the walls old and patched with boards. Inside, it's dim and smoky, lit by low yellow bulbs hanging from a web of wires. The air is filled with the scent of machine oil and fabric dust. A thin mist of cotton fibers hangs in the air, and you've learned to breathe through a kerchief tied over your mouth when it gets bad. Your job is to monitor 2 spinning machines, checking for snags in the thread, replacing spools, and making minor adjustments when they groan too loudly. You know the clatter of your machine intimately. The rhythm of it becomes part of your body. You can feel it in your spine, your knees, even your dreams. There's no music here, only the relentless noise of machines and the occasional whistle of a supervisor as he walks past. You don't speak much during your shift. It's too loud anyway. You communicate with hand gestures and the occasional nod. Most of your coworkers are women, many older than you. Some were teachers or nurses before the war. Others came from villages further east, displaced by fighting. You take your breaks in a side room where a small stove struggles to give off heat. The samovar boils slowly, and everyone brings their own cup. Tea is weak, but warm. Occasionally, someone has sugar or a small biscuit from a family package. These moments feel sacred. You share even when there's barely enough. Food is monotonous. Soup of cabbage or beets. A hunk of dark bread. If you're lucky, a spoon of barley or a boiled potato. You eat slowly, savoring each bite, not from luxury but necessity. Hunger is constant, though you don't speak of it. You measure your days in meals and meters of thread. News from the front is read aloud each morning. Names of cities, Kursk, Stalingrad, Leningrad, are followed by numbers, words of progress or sacrifice. Everyone listens in silence. Some cross themselves. Others say nothing. You think of your brother, sent to the front 2 winters ago. There has been no letter since the autumn. During your shifts, you drift into a rhythm so steady that you lose all sense of time. Your hands move on their own. Your thoughts wander. Sometimes to your childhood, sometimes to the smell of spring rain, sometimes to nothing at all. The noise of the machines becomes a kind of lullaby. On some nights, the temperature inside drops below freezing. Your fingers go numb, your breath visible with every exhale. You wrap rags around your feet inside your boots and keep moving. To stop is to freeze. Still, you feel the strength in your limbs, the repetition becoming its own kind of strength. Occasionally, A machine breaks. The supervisor yells. A team is called to fix it. Production matters. Everything you make is destined for the army. Uniforms, blankets, tarps. You imagine them at the front, covered in snow and smoke. You imagine a soldier wearing the coat you helped make, standing in a trench, still alive. Sleep comes in the morning. In the dormitory beside the factory, you and the other girls lie side by side on straw mattresses, boots tucked under your heads like pillows. The room is cold always. You wear your coat to bed. You don't dream often, just drift in and out of sleep, your ears still ringing with the sound of spinning machines. There is no glamour to your days, no speeches or parades. Just the quiet heroism of repetition, of keeping the wheels turning, of surviving. You find meaning not in victories, but in endurance. The factory is your front line, and you are proud, though you rarely say it aloud. Outside, the wind howls across the plains. Snow drifts pile high against the doors. But inside, the looms spin on, tirelessly, their rhythm matching your breath, your heartbeat, your will. Imagine waking not to the sound of gunfire or machines, but the distant clang of a railway bell, the low groan of steel on steel, and the quiet shuffle of tired feet. You are a prisoner now, captured in North Africa in 1943, marched to a holding camp, and finally transported across Europe to a prisoner of war camp somewhere in Bavaria. The sign outside says, Stalag VA, this is your new home. You are a soldier no longer. You're assigned a wooden bunk in a long barracks with 70 others. The walls are thin, lined with cracks that let in the wind. Straw, stuffed mattresses, layered in stained wool blankets, line each side. You sleep fully clothed, often with your boots on, because the chill never leaves. When you lie down, you can hear the breath of others. Slow, steady, sometimes stuttering in dreams. Each morning begins with a whistle. A guard shouts in German. You and your fellow prisoners shuffle into formation in the central yard for roll call. It is still dark. Frost coats the ground, and your breath clouds the air. You stand in silence, counting the minutes, the seconds, until it's over. Breakfast is thin. A ladle of barley soup, sometimes a hunk of bread, occasionally a boiled potato or a spoon of jam. Meals arrive 3 times a day, just enough to keep you moving. You learn to eat slowly, even when you're ravenous. The guards say little, watching from the edges. Some are older men, war-weary and distant. Others are younger, tense, always gripping their rifles too tightly. You work most days. Some are sent to chop wood in nearby forests. Others are assigned to farms or factories under German supervision. You are taken to a sawmill just beyond the camp fence. You wear a red patch on your coat, marking you as a prisoner. The walk there is long, mostly quiet. The rhythm of your days becomes routine: step, saw, stack, return. At the mill, you handle the same tools each day. The saws are heavy, the wood cold and damp. The scent of pine lingers in your clothes. You wipe your brow with stiff gloves and focus on the task. Not because you care, but because the repetition keeps you sane. The work keeps your body occupied while your mind drifts. You imagine home. You try to remember what summer smells like. Sometimes, the guards allow letters. Once a month, perhaps. You write slowly, carefully, knowing every word is read before it leaves. You do not write the truth, only that you are alive, that you are warm enough, that the food is adequate. When a reply comes, it is a treasure, a sliver of normal life in a world ruled by fences and silence. In the evenings, there are small comforts. Someone always manages to brew a Sat's coffee. Its taste bitter but warming. A few prisoners play cards, carving decks from scraps of cardboard. Others whittle, read, or simply sit. The conversations are muted. War stories are rarely told. They sit too close to the surface. Laughter comes in short bursts, always followed by long silences. Time is measured differently here. There are no calendars, only routines. Monday feels like Friday. Seasons shift slowly. You notice it in the trees beyond the fence, in the way the air smells when snow begins to melt. You lose track of how long you've been here. Some say a year, others say longer. The only thing that changes is the face of the guards, and sometimes even they return. You become close with a few others. You share rations, stories, warmth. You rely on one another for strength. When someone falls ill, you all take turns caring for him. When someone receives a parcel from home, it is shared. A square of chocolate divided 12 ways is still chocolate. There are rumors that the war is turning, that liberation may come. You've learned not to hope too easily, but still, you listen. A radio, hidden deep in the barracks, picks up faint broadcasts. News from London, from Moscow. You gather around it in secret, holding your breath as voices crackle through the static. Some nights, you dream of fields, of running barefoot on grass, of music drifting from a window. Then the whistle blows again and you rise. Cold air, wooden floors, the rustle of blankets, the rhythm begins again. You do not think of escape, not anymore. Your war is not one of glory, but of patience, of enduring, of surviving quietly, with dignity. Your battleground is measured in silence and days past. Outside, the mountains loom white and silent. The guards smoke by the fence. Snow gathers along the eaves. You walk back to your bunk, boots thudding softly on frozen ground. Another day is ending, and tomorrow will begin the same way. With a whistle, a line, a bowl of soup, and the unspoken promise to keep going. Now imagine yourself far from the front lines, on the edge of an empire slowly shrinking. You are stationed in a Japanese military outpost on a remote Pacific island in early 1945. The jungle presses in close, thick and green, the air heavy with the scent of damp leaves and rotting wood. You are a radio operator, part of a dwindling force left behind after the American landings bypassed this once important outpost. There is no more news from headquarters. The last coded message came weeks ago. Supplies have stopped. The officers say reinforcements will come, but you and the others have stopped believing. Now, you exist in a strange limbo, cut off from the world, slowly forgotten by the empire you serve. Your day begins before the sun rises. You wake to the sounds of insects and dripping leaves. The cot beneath you is damp, and your uniform clings to your skin. You light a small lamp and make your way to the hut where the radio sits, a heavy box of knobs and wires covered in dust and mold. You clean it each morning with a cloth torn from an old shirt. The static is constant. No voices reply. Messages are still recorded, just in case. You sit for hours with your headset on, logging static, hoping for something, anything, across the airwaves. Sometimes you send out signals blindly, tapping out weather reports or coded location checks. You write them down carefully in the station logbook, even though you suspect no one is listening. Outside, the jungle hums with life. Cicadas drone endlessly. Birds call out in sharp, sudden bursts. You walk the perimeter slowly, your boots squelching in mud. The others are quiet, moving like shadows. No one talks much anymore. Food is rationed down to handfuls of rice and scraps of fish. You catch rainwater in rusted barrels. Your uniform has faded from green to a dull brown. Letters from home, those that arrived months ago, are worn from constant folding. You read the same lines each evening, imagining your mother's voice, your sister's laughter, the feel of tatami beneath your feet. Those memories lie sharper than the present. There are drills, but fewer now. The commanding officer still holds roll call, though his voice trembles. One man went into the jungle last week and did not return. No one speaks of it. Another fell ill with fever and has not stood since. You take turns sitting beside him, wiping his brow with a damp rag, whispering comfort that doesn't come easily anymore. At night, the jungle feels vast, unknowable. You lie awake, listening to the wind in the trees, to the occasional cry of an unseen animal. Sometimes, flares appear briefly on the horizon, distant reminders of battles unfolding elsewhere. You wonder if the war is already over and no one told you. Your duties remain the same. Maintain the equipment. Record the silence. Wait, this, now, is your form of obedience. Of honor, not in victory, not in defeat, but in the simple act of continuing. Tending the machine, trimming the antenna, keeping the logbook up to date. You begin to move more slowly. The days are so similar they bleed together. Sometimes, the faces of your comrades blur. There's a rhythm to it all now, like the tide wake, listen, write, eat, wait. Occasionally, you dream of being in a train station again, somewhere in Tokyo, surrounded by the sound of crowds and the smell of bento boxes. You wake to the rustle of palm fronds. In your dreams, you hear your name called over a speaker. You imagine returning home, finding your street unchanged, slipping your boots off at the doorway, and stepping inside. You wonder if you would recognize the silence. Then morning comes again. The radio hums. You sit in your corner, headphones over your ears, logbook open. The jungle waits, silent and endless. Somewhere far across the ocean, time moves forward. But here, in this forgotten island outpost, the war lingers like the mist in the trees. Endless, quiet, and unmoving. And now, as the night deepens, you drift slowly back from the trenches, the bunkers, the cramped workshops and silent, listening posts. You return from snowy Parisian alleys and jungle watchtowers, from Berlin rooftops and English decoding rooms, from the kitchen fires of villagers and the endless march of the anonymous soldier. What lingers, perhaps, is not the roar of battles or the blare of headlines, but the quiet rhythms of ordinary survival. The man who shaved by candlelight in a frozen barrack. The woman who baked turnip bread for a line of strangers. The teenager who slept beneath camouflage netting and dreamt of trains. The clerk who decoded secrets in silence and never told a soul. In war, history often remembers generals, leaders, victories, and defeat. But there were millions of others, unnamed, uncelebrated, who lived through each hour, each ration, each whispered moment of fear or hope. Their stories unfolded not in glory, but in patience, not in triumph, but in routine. And now, you can let it go. Let the static of distant radios fade to quiet. Let the muddy boots be left at the door. Let the frost on the trench wall melt into nothing. Let the whistle of distant artillery dissolve into the hush of sleep. The war is over, for now, for tonight. You are not on a train or a rooftop or a lonely island. You are safe. You are still. You are here. And as you breathe in, slowly, and let the last threads of the past slip gently away, May you find yourself wrapped in quiet, in calm, in peace. Sleep well.